Awkward silence. All right, it's 1 o'clock. We're going to get kicked off. So another quick reminder, if you were not in the last session, there is a QR code on your table. That is a game for you all to play. It is a scavenger hunt. That QR code will get you started. If you don't have that QR code, on the back of your name badge is also that QR code. So play. There's prizes. Win the prizes. Also, our friends at Google have left some wonderful gifts for you to check out. There's some pens and stickers and, is that lip balm? Lip balm? It's that time of year in Ohio. My lips are getting a little crusty. So please, over at the front stage right table, please help yourself. So today we're pleased to welcome Jeff Nuckolls from Microsoft. Jeff is the Director of Azure Data and AI. He spent 10 years at Microsoft from 2002 into 2012 and rejoined Microsoft in 2020. Grass isn't always greener on the other side, is it? I've learned that lesson myself. After spending 8 years leading multi-cloud solution delivery teams at Harman, Salesforce, and AWS with a focus on Internet of Things, machine learning, and AI. He now leads the Azure Data Services practice for Microsoft U.S. Public Sector, supporting multiple states in the East Central region. In this session, Jeff will be sharing an overview of Microsoft's AI services offerings, including Copilot, Power Virtual Agents, and Azure OpenAI, and how these service offerings can be applied to drive transformative change within Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jeff Nuckolls.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Before I get started, again, my name is Jeff Nuckolls. I'm the Director for Azure Data and Artificial Intelligence. I would like to, make sure that you guys are all recognize the team here representing the state from Microsoft as well. I got Mike Cantalupe, Todd Larson, and Savita Mattel, who will also be joining me for the next session. So appreciate that. So anyway, let's just jump right in. So we're going to talk a little bit about Azure AI Services all up. We're going to get into more details specific to Azure OpenAI in the next session. I will touch on it on this one, but certainly we can cover some questions at the end on either topic. So by now, you've all probably seen a lot of press over the last several months with reference to ChatGPT and OpenAI and Microsoft, and obviously with Google, Bard, and everything else we've been hearing about this morning. So there is a lot of hype around AI, generally speaking. But AI has been around for quite some time, right? I mean, it's been around for at least, we've been doing a lot of AI in some of our services, and we'll touch on this for about at least over a decade now. So. But this is an interesting transition. I think it's fascinating. I think we all should find it to be very interesting, but more importantly, how can we leverage this to drive innovation? And when we think about this in terms of the current state that we're in state and local government, and really in any industry, when we look across the board, we are challenged with, obviously there's some geopolitical things that are going on, inflation rates are higher, there's a lot of things that are pressing us and making it more difficult for us to innovate, not the least of which is certainly the lack of resources that we have available to us to embrace this technology and drive it forward. We're doing our best, our very best. I think across the industry, all of the big players out there in the AI space are really trying to make this something that we can all work with and intuitively utilize this complex technology to our advantage. But to do so, we really need to build a culture of data, not necessarily like data science, but truly thinking in terms of data. Data is not just a monetary option, but truly as a form of innovation. And how do we embrace data to be able to drive it? And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the investments Microsoft has been making, particularly around artificial intelligence and in the data space. I mean, it truly is the foundation for what we do in artificial intelligence after all. And also our strategic partnerships that we have made, and some of the responsible AI best practices and pillars for success that we can help make this come to market and be more fruitful for you guys. Now, first around some of our investments, and I won't go into details about this, but I have papers that I can share with you later that talk about all of our investments that we're making. And they're not subtle, and they're not little, and we're continuing to make big ones. And you've seen already some of the billion-dollar investments we've made in OpenAI as well. But we do have currently 8 global data centers across the globe focused around research and development and ASL AI. We've published more than 3,500 papers specific to artificial intelligence. We've got over 22,000 patents related to artificial intelligence, and that kind of brings us back to the point. We've been here for a while. This isn't entirely new for us, right? And in several categories, and this is truly the bar we always try to set, is to get to human parity with all the things we think of in terms of vision and speech and language and all of the things that we think of in terms of artificial intelligence today. The bar is set at getting to human parity. And in many ways, over the years, we have achieved this with all of the services that we have provided for you guys in Azure, and we'll talk about some of those core platform services, these artificial intelligence and machine learning models that helped us get there. But to reach human parity is kind of the goal, right? So if you kind of look back at the history of seeing where we met with human parity and where we are today, it looks like I'm missing a point here in 2023, but really what I wanted to get at, and really was 2021, when we established the partnerships with OpenAI, where we're now seeing ourselves exceeding human parity in terms of understanding language, which is an interesting concept. More on that in just a bit, but how are we bringing these things to life to make them valuable to you as an end consumer? How are you leveraging these advances in artificial intelligence and technology today? And in fact, in many ways, you may not even realize you're leveraging some powerful technology underneath the hood when you're just leveraging your Surface devices, your Windows, your Office devices, et cetera, or technology. But we have leverage we've built on the shoulders of giants, if you will. If you look back over all the models that we have partnered with or those that we have built in-house, many of these which we built in-house and some of the partners that we worked with like OpenAI, we bring these to market to build solutions that make it more intuitive, easier for you to use, more accessible, and to be able to drive innovation in areas that are overly complex that we couldn't do before. And when I say something like being able to supersede or exceed human parity, in what ways do I mean that in the context of language? So in the context of you understanding language or me understanding language or thinking about animals and understanding how languages of animals communicate. One of the things that we're doing I find interesting is studying how orcas communicate in different regions because they communicate differently depending on where they're at as groups. But that's just another example of how we're starting to build these models out to not understand how to communicate amongst ourselves, but how to drive innovation and how to communicate with things that are maybe not so human. So stay tuned more for that. But back to how we are driving innovation in the products that we give and offer today, right? Artificial intelligence has been around, as I said, for quite some time. I'll talk a little bit about the history of artificial intelligence here at Microsoft in just a bit. But where are we seeing it being powered through the devices that you currently have open in front of you? Maybe some of the Office, the M365 suite or Dynamics, or whatever you might be using on a day-to-day basis, to include just opening your laptop and being able to log in the morning. I want to play a quick video for you, and hopefully this audio comes through for you. So let's see.
Every day, artificial intelligence helps us navigate our work and personal lives in so.
Let's try. Did I stop that? Well, seems it froze up. Let me try one more time here. Hold on. Well, it seems my computer froze up. One second. Well, maybe we could run it from the back instead, if that's possible. promise this is not AI doing this. It has. The clicker work? Okay. Aha. I like it. Okay. Gotcha. All right, thank you. That's okay. We can pass on this video. That's all right. I'll just move forward. All right. So I'll have to pay more attention to that next time then. We'll figure out how to get the videos working. So by and large, what we're wanting to suggest here, though, is when you look at the video, you look at how you actually authenticate even into your desktop in the mornings, it's leveraging artificial intelligence. In fact, it's leveraging maybe some of our vision APIs that we have available for you in artificial intelligence, just to recognize your face and log you in and authenticate you, as an example. These are all built on a foundation of machine learning models that we have built over several years, to include things that we mentioned, computer vision, text analytics. There's a whole series of bot services that have been built. In fact, we have chatbot examples that are already in place today. We'll demonstrate some of those in a little bit. And of course, speech. We talk a little bit about accessibility and building those into our products and offerings, and we've done that with M365 as well. So if you're already taking advantage of some of these things, you probably already recognize some of the value that's there within. But these are foundational platform-based services. So what do I mean by that? These are kind of the lower layer services for which developers or you might build. But what we try to do is get this to a point where you can do this without code as well. So that's to my point of trying to add layers of abstraction to reduce the complexity, to embrace this type of technology. So while there is a foundation of machine learning models, you can go as high as you want into the stack to leverage a no-code scenario to be able to build out your solutions, all the way down to getting into the weeds, leveraging your favorite language, your preferred programming language, whether it's R or Python or C#, to be able to build out models that satisfy your needs. So these are all readily available for you within Azure platform today. And these are just a subset of many things that are already there, but just wanted to show you some of the more popular ones. Now, typically, these platform-based services are utilized in conjunction to build out solutions. Yes, you can utilize these as one-off services, execute an API call, identify an image or objects within an image, extract text and graphs and images from PDF documents or text, all of the same things that you could imagine from any kind of API call that you could do with any of our AI services. You can utilize it in that fashion, or you can utilize it in building out a solution that you might run inside of your web application supporting the state of Ohio today. So real quick, I want to talk a little bit about some of these best practices. If you look back, it was probably, 2016, I guess. That's 2016, if my eyes are not jostling around. Satya pinned a paper to lay out some of the principal foundations for what would be responsible artificial intelligence. So we were getting our arms around this way back then to start thinking about the impact that artificial intelligence would have on the community. Not just within our products and service offerings and how could they be used and how cool could it be, but what could be the potential downfall of leveraging artificial intelligence? And how can we make sure that when we roll out our products and services, that we do so in a responsible way, in a way that prevents the use of malicious intent or malicious actors to use it to be able to siphon information from people or to trick them into being able to give up information, as may be the case more often, or to create bias and things like that, or to be able to inject violence or use hate. or explicit content that may not be appropriate in the professional workplace. We are building these AI services based on these principles to target the enterprise such that they can be used in a responsible way. So, now it goes on, I'm not gonna go into the details about the panels and stuff like that we've created internally, but understand that even every product team or anybody at Microsoft that works with our artificial intelligence services or builds these products and services utilize these 6 core principles that you see up here for responsible artificial intelligence. So these are also not just guidelines, these aren't just documents and papers that are out there for you to be able to peruse through and to lay out some best practices. We've actually built tools in every category up here so that you can actually apply these over your own artificial intelligence implementations. So, just to give you an idea, these are a couple of these tools. You can take a note of some of these URLs, but these are out there, and there's other tools out here too. This is just a couple of examples. But there's tools that will actually go out there and look into the context of what your AI services are doing to ensure that they're not, promoting malicious intent, make sure it's not injecting bias into the responses, perhaps that you might be coming back inside of the data that's being, that are being prompted. Furthermore, when we look at some of the things that we're doing with Azure, we want you to understand that your data, when you're working with Azure OpenAI, just as an example, or any AI service, typically this is grounded on your data. So we want you to understand that when we work with your data, it's still your data. We're not, just because it's in Azure, we're not having access to it. We're not utilizing your data for building out and fine-tuning models. It's stored within your tenant. You're the only one that has access to it. And we want to make sure that it's still being managed in a responsible way, even though it's in our Azure cloud environment. And I'm sure that's true for Google as well. I don't expect you would have to see anything different or expect anything different from either of us in that regards. It's just good best practices. It's good practices as any leader who's out there promoting artificial intelligence services and machine learning models that has to override on the data. And by the way, a lot of times people think that the data in these models are converged, and just understand that they are not, okay? These are pre-trained models over other data sources at some point to be able to understand the language and understand the context and the intent of how language is used. But when you bring your own data to the table, it's not necessarily injected into the models where it's stored. This is completely separate, so just understand the context behind that. So again, you have total control over your own data as it pertains to artificial intelligence and where it resides. So one thing that we're very proud to promote too, and when you think about how you leverage data or you leverage these services within state and local government, you need to know that it's regulatory compliant. And one of the things that we like to make sure that you understand too is these services are no different than any other Azure service in terms of the certifications of compliance that we promote for artificial intelligence or any data service that we have within Azure. So there's a whole, this is not the full list, by the way. There's hundreds of different certifications for regulatory compliance. All right, real quick, we'll talk a little bit about OpenAI specifically. And for most of you guys, you've already seen a lot of press coverage around Azure OpenAI or the partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI. I know there's been some conversations around that, but it's not just OpenAI. We've partnered with Meta, we've partnered with others like NVIDIA, and others that are trusting us and our platform to support their artificial intelligence implementations and to drive data and also innovate on our platform, leveraging OpenAI. And these are just a few. And if you're not familiar with Hugging Face, they build out a whole slew of different types of machine learning models for data science and other things as well. I think when sometimes people first see that and they're not familiar with this technology or these companies, they're kind of like, I don't know who this is. But understand these guys are actually in the forefront of driving innovation as it pertains to artificial intelligence, whether it's building out those models or providing the GPUs and the things like that that are required to be able to compute and process these large language models like NVIDIA. So when we first launched, or we first saw the launch of OpenAI 3, I think GPT-3, everybody was kind of back on their heels, a little bit in awe, a little bit concerned. I think a lot of us were kind of excited and concerned at the same time, just depends on your point of view or what you're, and maybe both. But the level of enthusiasm or the level of concern certainly didn't deter people from wanting to embrace this technology, that's for sure. When you look at the history of innovation or how, let's say, technology's been embraced to exceed 100 million users in terms of utilization. If you look back at the history, some 16 years for mobile phones, 7 for the internet, but just a couple of months it took for us to exceed 100 million users for OpenAI and GPT, which is kind of extraordinary. Kind of gives you an idea as to the level, or I guess rather to the adoption rate of technology. When you think back, from the time that somebody built a plane to we were shooting rockets into space, it was less than 50 years, probably 40-something years it took for us to get to that point. Now just imagine where we're going to be in 2 years, where we're already talking about, you got Google and Microsoft and everybody up here talking about OpenAI. Just imagine where it's going to be in just a couple of years. I don't expect us to sit on our hands and wait 5. Some may say it was aggressive to maybe come out and start with OpenAI or with GPT. We're already at GPT-4. We went from 3.5 Turbo to GPT-4. What does that really mean? Well, if you think about GPT-3, which everybody was all excited about and couldn't believe what it could do and all the possibilities, it was trained on 175 billion attributes, okay, which sounds like a lot and is a lot. But then just graduating from 3 to 3.5 to 4, we're up to over 1 trillion attributes, which really what that means. And the attributes in of themselves isn't as meaningful as maybe the density of the deep learning models and the neural networks that are supporting them. But it is important to understand that the context and the size of these models they do play a big role in terms of accuracy, performance, the reduction of hallucinations, as we use that term in OpenAI, which really just means getting it wrong in terms of the answer, in terms of the completion, the prompts. So we are continuing to innovate, and we're going to see new ones. We're going to see GPT-V coming out here soon as well. So, stand by. It's not a roller coaster that's going to go like this. It's continuing to go up. So the rate of evolution around AI and large language models in particular are just going to exponentially grow faster and faster. So what's the difference between Microsoft and OpenAI in terms of what we bring to the table? So we obviously invested billions of dollars in OpenAI several years ago. I think it was 2019. We first publicly announced our partnership with OpenAI. And since then, we've continued to grow that relationship. But they built out several models. Some, now understand now that, GPT and OpenAI, it's a multimodal model already. So in terms of the Codex one, that's already been kind of graduated into GPT. So that was the one that actually, I think, like they said, Cody basically does all of the coding. So if you give it a prompt to say, write some code that does X, Y, Z, it'll automatically spit that out. Or go create me 3 unit tests on this code that I copied and pasted into this prompt. It'll automatically do that for you. We've already built this capability, in fact, into one of our core service offerings for developers called GitHub. More on that a little bit later. But in terms of being able to identify a bug in the code, explain to me what this code is doing. Explain to me like a 10-year-old. You prompt it to tell you how you want to understand it, how you need to visualize it, and it can do that. Or to go out and generate an architectural diagram that explains this in context, creating those images. This is what I mean by multimodal. It's not just text in, text out, but we're able to generate not only code, we're able to generate images, we're able to do a lot of things, including generate new text from existing documents as well. That's the generative aspect of it. But what does Microsoft bring to the table to make this more enterprise ready? It's security, first and foremost. We wrap this with the security services that we provide for all of our Azure services. So, of course, you got the encryption capabilities and things like that, but having rollback-based access controls over access to the data that's underpinning of this AI model is extremely important. So when user A has access to certain documents for which Azure OpenAI is grounded on, they may have access to it. User B, who never had access to that same document, will not get access to it, even though they're using the same service to ask questions over it. That's very, very important in this space, that you have the ability to provide authenticated access to a service that understands, respects, and appreciates your access level to certain documents as to where these large language models are grounded on. And, of course, having a supported SLA having all of the regulatory compliance that you would need to expect in a state and local government implementation. These are all things that are provided by Microsoft as well. So it's a big difference if you were to go out to, chat.openai.com and play around with the OpenAI models out there in the public sphere. All of that is actually trained and accessible for all of the data that's out there. It's not just Twitter and Wikipedia. It's a plethora of sources that anything that's been published globally. In fact, I would suspect it's probably the exact same sources that I'm sure that Google's is too. If you were to go out and look at BART or the PaLM model, the large language model supporting that underneath the covers. So the big difference here is when you come into Microsoft, what we want you to do is to make sure that these large language models are pre-trained. In fact, if you want to know what GPT is, it's generative, it's pre-trained models. These things have been trained on all this data sources already just to understand language. But understand the language, the intent, and the context for which it's being used, such that it can actually provide you relative prompts back in return and or help create and generate new text for you on your behalf. But here at Microsoft, we want you to ground this on your data specifically so that it lessens the likelihood of any kind of hallucinations. So as an example, if you were to ask a policy-based question to the OpenAI interface or ChatGPT, you might not get an accurate response. We call that a hallucination if it comes back with something that's not accurate potentially, or that it's not well suited to or applicable. But when we ground this in your data, let's say you upload documents, specific versions of the documents, into, like, let's say Azure Cognitive Search Indexer, you know that that is the source of truth that only the responses will be generated from. And so that's the kind of what we mean by making sure you ground it in those truths, in those facts. All right, so we have another situation where I was going to play a video, and I'm not sure if it's going to work, but we'll give it a shot. I would like to announce Azure AI Studio. I think actually it's still kind of called Azure OpenAI Studio. There's a lot of things in there that's not necessarily just for OpenAI. But this makes it easy for you to have playgrounds for which you can immediately push solutions out into a web-based interface or to be able to play around with it without even deploying something right within the portal experience itself. So if I wanted to go create that ChatGPT experience, leveraging Azure OpenAI, grounded on my series of documents, I can do that in just a few clicks. In fact, if you all stick around for the next session, you'll see an example or demonstration as to how we go about doing that. And we can go into more details in the next session about how to build it out, leveraging AI Studio if you really wish to dive into it deeper, provided we have time, of course. Let's check and see if we can get this video to play.
Introducing Azure AI Studio, a full lifecycle tool to build, customize, train, evaluate, and deploy the latest next-generation models responsibly. With just a few clicks, developers can ground AI models with their structured and unstructured data to quickly and easily build customized, cutting-edge conversational experiences for their customers. Developers can take advantage of a new model catalog that works with the popular models organizations use, including those from Azure OpenAI Service, Hugging Face, and many other open source models. With PromptFlow, developers can combine relevant data from your organization and create a detailed prompt to get better results. PromptFlow works with Foundation, internally developed or open source models, and uses popular open source tools, LangChain, and Semantic Kernel. And because the AI systems we build are designed to support our AI principles, with Azure AI Content Safety, we are making it easier for you to test and evaluate your AI deployments for safety. This is Azure AI Studio, the trusted tools you need to build the next generation of AI applications.
All right. So that's just an example. I'm glad I was able to play that video. That's great. Thank you. So just to give you an example as to how you can leverage the studio for being able to drag and drop and build out these flows to be able to build these solutions without having to write any code, which is very nice, of course. But if you wanted to, as I mentioned, you have full access to do so. Now let's take a look at the power of leveraging these large language models with your data. Now we're going to, again, in the next session, we're going to have an example where we walk through this, but when it comes to your data, it creates an example for how we can actually build trust between Microsoft and you in terms of establishing a relationship in terms on factual data without hallucinations, and providing real feedback to your constituents or to your agencies who want to be able to ask natural language questions over your data. And being able to do that with Azure OpenAI is one thing, but when you can do this also with your existing applications, it's even more powerful. So let's say you even have pre-built applications, or you're building new applications, or you're building a chat bot, or whatever you're trying to build. It's just as simple as making an API call, okay? We have several examples of that. But being able to do this with applications that we've built already is something that we're doing too. So if you think of this as this Azure OpenAI as kind of building out these information assistants that have deep, deep knowledge over data and language and can understand the context and intent of what you're trying to say. Just imagine being able to ask natural language questions utilizing things in your Microsoft Office suite that you use today with M365 or any of our cloud products. In fact, we're rolling out something called Copilot, which had been mentioned already earlier today, but Copilot in every cloud offering that we have. In fact, probably next month, you're going to see more announcements about Copilot being rolled out for M365. You've already seen it with GitHub. If you haven't, it's a great thing to go out there and explore. If you're Power BI premium users, you probably have already seen some examples of Copilot being built in. And what it really means is you can just tell it something, ask it a question. The really one that excites me is around security. You know, if I want to know if this particular infrastructure is secure or how should I secure it, I can just ask that. Ask those simple questions, and it will show me exactly where it might be insecure, or maybe where I can do as a best practice to prevent a particular, like a SQL injection hack or something, which should already be pretty baked in. But the idea that you can ask anything in a natural language and get a response back, or have it show you, or have it automatically generate the infrastructure code to be able to automatically deploy something is very, very powerful. To give you an example of this, I want to show this next video of how you can leverage Copilot with a product that maybe most of us are already well familiar with in Excel. Now, if you do anything with numbers or work within Excel, you know that it can be, if you're not a power user of Excel, it can be cumbersome to drive trends and analysis over data and numbers. But let's just take a look at how Copilot and leveraging these large language models can benefit us in the M365 space.
You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need. But you want to drill in. You ask Copilot a follow-up question about one of the trends. Copilot creates a new sheet, giving you a sandbox to play in and helping you better understand what's happening. You ask Copilot to visualize what contributed to the decline in sales growth this period. Copilot adds a little color to make the problem jump off the page. Now you want to dig deeper and ask a follow-up question with a what-if scenario. Copilot not only answers your question, it creates a simple model and even asks if you want to learn more about what it did with a step-by-step breakdown. Finally, you can ask it to create a graph of your projected model. Copilot in Excel turned a sea of data into clear insights and actions.
So that's great. It gives you an idea of how you can ask natural language questions over your data and start to see trends analysis and get predictions out of that data without you having to write a single line of code or knowing how to write some of those formulas behind Excel. Let me share another example. For those of you who work with Outlook, this might be helpful and appealing as well. So let's jump in.
Copilot in Outlook helps you stay on top of email. You have important emails to respond to. Copilot can help you separate the signal from the noise and give you hours of time back. It helps you triage your inbox so you can prioritize the most important emails. And Copilot helps you on the go in Outlook Mobile. It can summarize long email threads. You can draft a reply, use data from an Excel file, and Copilot will generate a reply for you. You can edit it. You can make it more concise, change the writing style, or add more context. Now all that's left to do is review the proposed response and hit send. It's a productivity game changer.
So I'm sure most of you probably would prefer to have that on your computer right now. Again, that's coming soon. But this is the power of leveraging these large language models with products and services that you're already using today to be more efficient and more effective in your jobs. So I got some more examples that I wanted to show. I wanted to ask Mike if he could come up and talk a little bit about GitHub platform as it pertains to Copilot.
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Canalupo. I'm the customer success account manager supporting the state of Ohio. There's actually 3 of us. So my role is to really help you deliver or implement things that you've already decided that you're going to go forward with. So we help bring in resources in. I am by no means a technical resource to talk through some of this stuff, but hopefully wanted to at least shed some light on 2 areas where maybe people aren't thinking about AI too much. Mostly we think about cloud and like data, like what Jeff was talking about. And so these 2 other areas, such as GitHub here. So GitHub Copilot was actually the first of the Microsoft Copilots that was released. And what it provides is just immediate out-of-the-box productivity gains for your developers. And if you want to go to the next slide, yep. So some of the capabilities today, you get code suggestions and autocomplete. I forget the exact statistic if it's on here. Yeah, 55% faster coding, and yeah, 46% of the code is written with the help of Copilot. So to actually get you started in a shell of a program, GitHub Copilot's already helping companies today. And it gives you a chat experience right in your IDE, similar to what you saw with the Copilot experience with the Excel demo and the Outlook video. It's right in GitHub Copilot. Some other things coming down the roadmap is Copilot for pull requests, as well as Copilot for advanced security. So auto remediation of identified vulnerabilities in the code or issues with the code. Copilot is going to be coming to help remediate that stuff automatically for you. And the next slide, please. And so if you want more information about that, there's going to be some more announcements coming soon here, November 8th and 9th at GitHub Universe. So if you want to check that out, githubuniverse.com. I don't know anyone that was in Michael's session just before lunch. I know he talked about GitHub and some of the uses he's had for it within ODOT. So if you're interested, I encourage you to check that out. So that's on the coding and developer side. And the other piece that people maybe don't realize is that we also have it now in our surfaces. And so specifically, the next slide here. There's a neural processing unit that is now in new Surface devices, some of the new Surface devices. So we've partnered with Qualcomm, Intel, to put that in the hardware. And what that does is it actually offloads a lot of the AI computing from the normal CPU. So anything that you're normally doing with Outlook, with PowerPoint, with Teams in general, it will actually keep your CPU running on that, and then it'll offload the AI pieces to this NPU. So it frees up your device's resources. And so you can do different things on the next slide, I believe. Yeah, so the advantage of that is it provides the ability for some of the pieces and technologies like within Teams that you wouldn't think are AI driven, like background blur, some of the, what was the other one? Can't read that up there, so. Voice focus, eye contact, live captions. So it actually offloads those to that NPU, and so your CPU is still doing its thing while all those other processes that you might take for granted, and it's hard to tell on this image, but I do know that the image on the left looks not as good as the image on the right with a background blur perspective. So typically we think of AI being in the cloud, but this is an example where we're trying to look forward, working with partners to put AI actually on devices to help extend it to the endpoint. And I believe that's it. I don't think there's another slide. Yep.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. So before we wrap up, I wanted to share some resources. If you do want to take a snapshot of this, you can take it after, whichever, with your phones with these QR codes. You can stay up to date with some of the new advances that are coming out with Azure OpenAI. And if you have any additional questions, some of these links here might be a little bit dark, so if you want to wait, we're going to be sharing all these resources with you later. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I want to thank you guys for your time, and I think we're wrapping up just about on time, maybe a couple minutes before, so we got time for questions? We got a few minutes for questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll bring a mic to you. Anyone? We good?
Everybody wants to wait for the OpenAI session, I suspect, right?
All right. So we've got 1:40. Our next session begins in here at 2 o'clock. It's going to be an extension of of a demonstration of what we've already learned with the Azure AI services. So thank you very much, Jeff.